I spent my life studying to get rich. What I realized at 65 made me cry. I cried yesterday. Sitting on the porch of my expensive house, looking at the perfectly manicured lawn that a team of landscapers maintains, because I never learned how to care for a garden myself, I cried for the first time in decades. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. And don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. Not the kind of tears that come from physical pain or momentary sadness, but deep soul-wrenching sobs that shook my entire body, the kind of crying that comes from a realization so devastating that it breaks something fundamental inside you. I'm 65 years old, and yesterday I finally understood with crystal clarity that I wasted my entire life. Not wasted in the sense of not achieving anything, because by conventional metrics, I achieved everything. I was the best student in my class, every class, from elementary school through graduate school. I earned 2 college degrees from prestigious universities. I worked at Fortune 500 companies that people dream of joining. I climbed the corporate ladder faster than anyone else in my cohort. I made smart investments. I own this house paid in full, worth over $1 million. I have a retirement account that could sustain me comfortably for 3 lifetimes. But sitting there yesterday, scrolling through Facebook and seeing my former classmates holding grandchildren in their arms, gathered around Thanksgiving tables with 3 generations of family, posting photos of anniversary celebrations with spouses they've loved for 40 years, I realized that I have nothing, absolutely nothing that actually matters. The crying started because of a specific post. Tom Henderson, a guy I went to high school with, someone I always considered beneath me intellectually, someone who barely graduated while I was valedictorian, posted a photo from his 65th birthday party. The image showed him surrounded by what must have been 30 people, maybe more. His wife of 42 years was kissing his cheek. His 3 grown children stood behind him, each with their own spouses. Hand on his lap and scattered around him were 7 grandchildren, ranging from toddlers to teenagers, all wearing party hats, all genuinely smiling, and the caption read, "Blessed beyond measure. 65 years on this earth, and every single one worth it because of these people. I'm the richest man alive." Tom Henderson, who works as a manager at a hardware store, who lives in a modest 3-bedroom house in our hometown, who drives a 10-year-old truck, called himself the richest man alive. And looking at that photo, I knew with absolute certainty that he was right and I was wrong. He is rich in all the ways that matter, and I am bankrupt. I need to tell you how I got here, not because I want sympathy, but because maybe, just maybe, if I explain exactly how I destroyed my own life while thinking I was building it, someone out there will stop before it's too late. Someone will put down their textbook and go to that party. Someone will skip that extra work assignment and go on that date. Someone will choose people over productivity before they end up like me, 65 years old, sitting alone in an expensive house that echoes with emptiness, realizing that they traded everything meaningful for things that ultimately mean nothing. I grew up in suburban Ohio in the 1960s, the only child of middle-class parents who had very specific ideas about success. My father was an accountant, my mother a school secretary, and both of them drilled into me from my earliest memories that education was the key to everything. They weren't wrong exactly, but they also weren't entirely right, and I didn't have the wisdom to understand the difference. They came from working-class backgrounds, had fought hard to achieve their middle-class status, and were determined that I would go even further. "Study hard," my father would say every single night. "Get good grades, get into a good college, get a good job, and you'll never have to worry about anything." That became my mantra, my religion, the lens through which I viewed every choice and opportunity. I was a naturally bright kid, and school came easily to me. I discovered early that being the smartest kid in class brought praise from teachers, pride from parents, and a sense of superiority that became addictive. When I got my first report card with all A's in 2nd grade, my parents took me out for ice cream and told everyone we encountered about their brilliant son. That feeling, that validation, That sense of being special and successful, I chased it for the next 6 decades. In elementary school, while other kids played at recess, I read books. While they had sleepovers and birthday parties on weekends, I was doing extra credit assignments. My parents encouraged this, praised this, held me up as an example to other parents of what a dedicated student looked like. I had no close friends, but I told myself I didn't need friends. I had achievements. Middle school was when the pattern really solidified. I was placed in all advanced classes, separated from the regular kids, which only reinforced my sense of being different, being better. I remember the first time I was invited to a school dance in 7th grade. A group of kids from my math class were going together, and one of them, probably out of pity, asked if I wanted to come. I remember actually considering it for about 5 seconds before my father said, "You don't need to waste your time on that nonsense. You have a math competition coming up, let's practice." So I stayed home and practiced math problems while my classmates danced and laughed and learned how to interact with each other in ways that I would never learn. I won the math competition. I got a trophy that sat on my shelf for years, and I missed out on the beginning of learning how to be a normal human being. High school was more of the same, only intensified. I was in every advanced placement class offered. I was president of the math club, captain of the academic decathlon team, and national merit scholar. My grades were perfect, my test scores were in the 99th percentile, my college applications were impeccable, and I was completely, utterly alone. Not because kids were mean to me, they mostly just ignored me, but because I had made myself unavailable for any kind of normal teenage experience. When kids talked about the football game or the upcoming prom or who was dating whom, I had nothing to contribute. I didn't go to games, didn't care about prom, didn't understand teenage romance because I had never participated in any of it. There was a girl, Jessica, who sat next to me in AP Chemistry our junior year. She was smart, pretty, kind, and for reasons I still don't understand, she seemed interested in me. She would start conversations, laugh at my awkward attempts at humor, ask me questions about myself. One day she very clearly asked if I wanted to study together at her house that weekend, and even my socially inept teenage self could tell that study together meant more than just academics. I said no. I told her I had to prepare for the SAT, which was still 4 months away. The disappointment on her face was obvious, but I rationalized it immediately. Girls were a distraction. Relationships were complicated and time-consuming. I had goals to achieve. There would be time for that stuff later after I secured my future. I got into Princeton with a full academic scholarship. My parents cried with pride at my high school graduation, where I was valedictorian, and gave a speech about the importance of dedication and hard work. I stood at that podium, looking out at my classmates, most of whom I had barely spoken to in 4 years, and I felt triumphant. I had won. I was going to an Ivy League school while most of them were going to state schools or community colleges or straight into the workforce. I was on my way to success, and they were just on their way to ordinary lives. That's what I thought. That's genuinely what I believed. I couldn't have been more wrong. Princeton was supposed to be where everything came together, where my years of sacrifice and dedication paid off. And in terms of academics, it did. I excelled in my classes, majored in economics and mathematics, maintained a 4.0 GPA, made the dean's list every semester. But college is supposed to be about more than just classes. It's supposed to be about discovering yourself, forming lifelong friendships, having experiences, making mistakes, falling in love, learning who you are beyond your grades and achievements. I did none of that. I lived in the library. My roommates freshman year tried to include me in their social activities, invited me to parties, to study groups that always turned into social gatherings, to trips into New York City on weekends. I always said no. I had papers to write, problem sets to complete, reading to do. By sophomore year, I had a single room, which I told myself was perfect because it eliminated distractions, but really it just eliminated any chance of human connection. There were opportunities for romance at Princeton, even for someone as socially awkward as me. Smart, ambitious women who might have appreciated someone equally driven. I remember a girl in my econometrics class, Sarah, who asked me to get coffee multiple times. She was brilliant, headed to graduate school, passionate about development economics. We had actual intellectual compatibility, but I always made excuses. Too busy, Too much work, maybe another time. Eventually, she stopped asking. Years later, I looked her up and saw she was a professor at Stanford, married to another economist with 2 kids, doing groundbreaking research and apparently living a full, balanced life. I often wonder what would have happened if I had just said yes to coffee. But I didn't, because in my mind, anything that wasn't directly advancing my academic or career goals was wasteful. I graduated summa cum laude, was accepted to graduate programs at Harvard, Yale, and MIT, chose Harvard Business School because it had the best placement rates into top-tier consulting firms. My parents came to my graduation, aging now, my father walking with a slight limp from an injury at work, my mother's hair grey, both of them glowing with pride at what their son had achieved. My mother hugged me and said something that I dismissed at the time, but that echoes constantly in my mind now. I'm so proud of you, honey. Just remember that success isn't only about career and money. Make sure you take time to find love, to build a family, to enjoy your life. I smiled and nodded and thought to myself that I would get to all that later, after I established my career, after I achieved financial security, after I made my mark on the world. There would be plenty of time for personal life after I took care of professional life. That was the lie I told myself, and I believed it completely. Business school was 2 years of the most intense work I had ever experienced. Harvard Business School is designed to be competitive, to push you to your limits, to separate the good from the best. I thrived in that environment. I was in the top 5% of my class, recruited heavily by McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, all the prestigious firms that MBA students dream about. I accepted a position at McKinsey in their New York office with a starting salary that seemed almost obscene, over $150,000 plus bonuses, and that was in the early 1980s. I was 24 years old, and I felt like I had made it, like all the sacrifice had been worth it, like I was finally starting the successful life I had worked so hard for. Management consulting is a brutal industry. The hours are insane, the travel is constant, the pressure is relentless. But I loved it, or at least I loved what it represented. Validation of my intelligence, my worth, my superiority. I worked 80, 90, sometimes 100 hours a week. I flew to client sites every Monday, worked 16-hour days Tuesday through Thursday, flew back Friday, and worked most of the weekend preparing for the next week. I had an apartment in Manhattan that I barely saw and certainly never decorated. It was just a place to sleep and store my clothes. My entire life was work. My colleagues became my only social circle, but those relationships were shallow, transactional, based entirely on professional interaction. We didn't talk about personal things, about feelings, about life beyond projects and clients and career advancement. I got promoted rapidly, senior consultant at 27, junior partner at 31, full partner at 35. By the time I was in my late 30s, I was making over $500,000 a year, advising CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, flying business class to meetings in London and Tokyo and Sao Paulo. On paper, I was extraordinarily successful. In reality, I was a shell of a human being, working constantly, never pausing to consider what I was working for beyond the next promotion, the next raise, the next achievement that would prove my worth. There were a few half-hearted attempts at dating during those years. A woman I met at a conference asked me to dinner, and I went, mostly because a colleague had overheard and would have mocked me if I declined. It was awkward. I didn't know how to talk about anything except work. When she tried to steer the conversation toward personal topics, toward hobbies or family or what I like to do for fun, I had nothing to say. I didn't have hobbies. I barely spoke to my family. I didn't do anything for fun. After an uncomfortable 2 hours, she politely said she didn't think we were compatible. I felt relieved. Dating seemed complicated and time-consuming, full of emotional vulnerabilities and uncertainties that I didn't know how to navigate. It was easier to just focus on work, where the rules were clear and success was measurable. My parents died within a year of each other when I was in my early 40s. First my father from a stroke, then my mother from what I think was essentially a broken heart and loneliness without her partner of 45 years. I flew back to Ohio for both funerals, stayed 2 days each time, and flew back to work. At my mother's funeral, Her sister, my Aunt Mary, cornered me and said something I've never forgotten. "Your mother worried about you constantly. She was proud of your success, but she was heartbroken that you were alone, that you never seemed to have any joy in your life, that you were so focused on work that you forgot to actually live. She died worried about you." I told my aunt that I was fine, that everyone had different paths in life, that I was happy with my choices. But her words stuck with me, needling at the back of my mind during flights and hotel stays and long nights at the office, until I successfully buried them under more work. I left McKinsey at 45 to join a private equity firm as a managing partner. The money was even more absurd. Multi-million-dollar annual compensation, carried interest in deals that made me wealthy beyond anything my parents could have imagined. I bought the house I'm sitting in now, over $1 million, 6 bedrooms for one person, as if having extra empty rooms made me more successful. I bought a luxury car I rarely drove. I invested aggressively and watched my net worth grow into the 8 figures. And I was completely, utterly, devastatingly alone. My 50s passed in a blur of more work, more money, more achievements, and more isolation. I developed health problems, high blood pressure, borderline diabetes, chronic stress. I started taking medications for everything. My doctor, a straightforward woman about my age, told me bluntly during one appointment, "You're killing yourself. You work too much, you don't exercise, you have no social support system, you're constantly stressed. Your body can't sustain this, you need to make major life changes." I nodded, thanked her for her concern, and changed nothing. What was I going to change? Work was all I had. My identity was completely tied to my professional success. Without work, I was nothing, no one. That was terrifying to contemplate, so I didn't contemplate it. I just kept working. I retired at 62, not entirely by choice. The private equity firm was restructuring, offering generous retirement packages to senior partners, and my body was essentially forcing the decision. I was having chest pains, severe anxiety, insomnia so bad that I was barely sleeping 3 hours a night, even with medication. I took the package, which was substantial enough that combined with my investments I would never need to work again. I was financially set for life, and I was terrified. For the first time in over 40 years, I had no structure, no deadlines, no meetings, no projects. Just empty days stretching ahead with nothing to fill them. The first year of retirement was the worst year of my life. I tried to fill the time with activities. I joined a golf club, but playing alone wasn't enjoyable, and I didn't know how to make friends with the other members who had established groups and decades of history together. I tried taking classes, photography and cooking, but I was the awkward older single man in classes full of couples and women, clearly not fitting in. I traveled, took expensive trips to places I had always wanted to see, but traveling alone amplified the loneliness rather than alleviating it. I'd be at Machu Picchu or the Taj Mahal or the Great Wall of China, surrounded by couples and families taking photos together, laughing together, experiencing these moments together, and I'd be standing there alone with no one to share it with, no one who cared that I was there, no one who would remember these trips with me. I tried, really tried, to date. I joined online dating sites, paying for the premium memberships that promised better matches. I went on dozens of first dates over the course of a year. They were uniformly terrible. I didn't know how to flirt, didn't know how to be charming, didn't know how to talk about myself in ways that weren't just reciting my resume. The few women who agreed to second dates quickly realized that I had no idea how to be in a relationship, had never learned the basics of emotional intimacy, of vulnerability, of mutual care. One woman, after our third date, said something that cut deep. "You're a nice man and you've obviously been very successful, but it's like you never learned how to be human. You don't know how to connect. I'm sorry, but I need someone who knows how to actually be in a relationship, and I don't think you can learn that at this age." She was right and I knew it, but hearing it said out loud was devastating. The loneliness became crushing. Not just the absence of company, but the existential loneliness of realizing that there was not a single person on earth who truly knew me, who cared about me beyond superficial pleasantries, who would be there if I needed them. I started having panic attacks, waking up in the middle of the night gasping for air, feeling like the walls were closing in, feeling the weight of 60-plus years of isolation pressing down on me. I went back to therapy, found a therapist who specialized in late-life issues. After several sessions, he said something that broke me. You spent your entire life building walls around yourself to protect yourself from the vulnerability of connection, and now those walls are a prison. You don't know how to let people in because you never learned how. It's not impossible to learn at your age, but it's incredibly difficult, and it requires a willingness to be vulnerable in ways you've spent your whole life avoiding. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free, and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. And don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. I genuinely tried. I joined groups, volunteered at organizations, showed up to community events. But making real friends, the kind of deep friendships that take years to develop, when you're in your 60s and have no practice at friendship, is nearly impossible. Everyone else already has their established social circles, their lifelong friends, their families. They're polite to the newcomer, but there's no room for deep connection. I'm always on the outside looking in, watching other people have the relationships I never built. My health has continued to decline. I had a minor heart attack last year, spent a week in the hospital, and no one visited. Not one person. I had no emergency contact to list except my lawyer. The nurses looked at me with pity. This 65-year-old man lying in a hospital bed with no family, no friends, no one who cared enough to sit with him. When I was discharged, I came home to my empty house, and the silence was deafening. That's when I started looking into assisted living facilities, because I know what's coming. My health is failing, I'm going to need care eventually, and I have no one to provide it. So I'll pay strangers to do it. We'll spend my final years in a facility surrounded by other lonely old people. We'll die in a sterile room with a professional caregiver holding my hand because it's their job, not because they care. Yesterday, when I saw Tom Henderson's Facebook post, when I saw him surrounded by all those people who loved him, when I saw the genuine joy on his face, something inside me shattered. I spent 65 years doing everything I was told would lead to success, and I ended up with nothing that actually matters. Tom spent 65 years focusing on people and relationships, probably worried about money sometimes, probably didn't achieve great career heights, and he ended up with everything that actually matters. He's rich in love, in family, in connection, in meaning. I'm rich in money and poor in absolutely everything else. I sat on my porch yesterday and cried because I finally understood what I had done to myself. I traded my entire life for a career and a bank account. I never kissed someone I loved. I never held hands while watching a sunset. I never had someone who knew all my flaws and loved me anyway. I never experienced the intimacy of making love with someone I cared about. Yes, at 65 I'm a virgin, not just physically but emotionally. I never had children. I never held my own baby, never taught a child to ride a bike, never watched them graduate or get married, never held a grandchild. I never had deep friendships, the kind where you can call at 3 a.m. and they'll be there, the kind where you have decades of shared history and inside jokes. I never built anything real and human and lasting. I built a resume and a portfolio, and they are worthless substitutes for a life actually lived. The cruelest part is that I can't go back. I can't redo those 65 years. I can't unmake the thousands of choices that led me here. I can't go back to 25 or 35 or 45 and choose differently. Those opportunities are gone forever. The girl in chemistry class who liked me graduated and married someone else and has grandchildren now. The woman in my econometrics class who wanted to get coffee built a life with someone else. The colleagues who invited me to social events eventually stopped inviting me and formed relationships with people who actually showed up. Every door I closed stayed closed, and now I'm standing in an empty hallway with no doors left to open. I'm writing this as a warning, as a desperate attempt to prevent someone else from making the same catastrophic mistakes I made. If you're reading this and you're young, if you're in your 20s or 30s or even 40s, and you're sacrificing everything for career success, for financial security, for achievements and accolades, please stop. Please consider what you're trading for that success. Yes, work hard. Yes, build a career. Yes, achieve financial stability, but not at the cost of your humanity. Not at the cost of love and friendship and connection. Not at the cost of actually living your life. Say yes to the party even though you have work to do. Go on the date even though it's inconvenient. Build friendships even though they're messy and complicated. Let people in even though it's scary and vulnerable. Take the time to fall in love, to have relationships, to make mistakes, to have your heart broken and break someone else's heart and learn from it. Have sex, lots of it, with people you care about. Get married if you want to get married. Have children if you want children. Build a family, a chosen family if not a biological one. Invest in relationships with the same intensity you invest in your career. Actually live your life instead of postponing living until some imaginary future point when you'll have made it, because that point never comes. And suddenly you're 65 and realize you wasted your one precious life chasing things that ultimately don't matter. Money doesn't matter. Not really. Not in the way that relationships matter. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and I would trade every penny of it for one genuine relationship, for one person who actually loves me, for the experience of having built a life with someone, for children and grandchildren who visit because they want to, for friends who know me deeply and care about me truly. I would trade all of it for the memories of a life actually lived, rather than a career efficiently executed. Success without connection is not success, it's just organized loneliness. Achievements without people to share them with are meaningless. Money without relationships is just numbers on a screen. At the end of your life, and trust me, the end comes so much faster than you think, you will not care about how much money you made or what position you held or what awards you won. You will care about whether you loved and were loved, whether you had people in your life who mattered, whether you built something human and real and meaningful. I'm 65 years old, sitting on the porch of my expensive house, and I'm terrified. Terrified of the years ahead living alone in an assisted living facility. Terrified of dying alone with no one who cares. Terrified that this is it, that I wasted my one chance at life, and there's no going back, no do-overs, no second chances. But more than my own fear, I'm desperate for someone out there to learn from my mistakes. Don't do what I did. Don't sacrifice your life for your career. Don't postpone living thinking you'll get to it later. Don't build walls around your heart. Don't spend decades chasing success only to realize at 65 that you achieved nothing that actually matters. Are you enjoying this story? Then consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Take a look. 94. 8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you're part of that group, take the opportunity to subscribe now. It's free, and you'll keep receiving amazing stories. And don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. It's too late for me. I made my choices, lived my life, and now I have to face the consequences. But it's not too late for you. If you're reading this and you're sacrificing relationships for career, stop. If you're postponing love because you're too busy, make time. If you're building walls around your heart to protect yourself, take them down. If you're living for some future version of success instead of living now, change course. Please, learn from my failure. Don't end up like me, 65 years old with millions in the bank and nothing that actually matters. Don't waste your life the way I wasted mine. It's the biggest regret I'll ever have, and I'll carry it with me to my lonely grave.